everyone. Welcome. Settle in. Thank you for coming tonight. It's a rainy day, so I appreciate everyone showing up despite the weather. So we're going to get started. My name is Eric. I'm the community manager of the Podcast Garage. We do events for podcasters, mainly to get people to network, learn the craft, and connect with one another. So we try to do these seminars twice a month, again, to try to keep that momentum going of community building. So we have a very special evening. We've got the Snap Judgment team here with us today, and so you'll see them up on stage soon. But let me go through. Yeah, nice. Woo! Give the Snap Judgment team a round of applause. So today's agenda, I'll do a quick intro, and then we're going to go into Q&A with Glynn Washington. His whole team will be here. We're going to do a panel for about 50 minutes, and then we're going to do a Q&A. So you'll have time to ask your questions. So you all have these papers. It's a document with 4 pitches. These are real pitches from the Snap team. They'll talk more about it. So we're going to go over them together. So if you have any questions, jot them down, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. We'd love to get your thoughts. This is being recorded and being live streamed right now. So we got folks virtually joining us. So thank you all for joining. And then so afterwards, we'll have the mixer with refreshments. So we've got some food in the back, and during that time, feel free to mingle with the Snap team. Cool. Another thing I want to say is the Podcast Garage is a place where we try to find collaborators. So and we oftentimes ask y'all for ideas and suggestions. So there'll be a feedback form at the end. If you have things you like to see, people you know who might be good presenters at the Podcast Garage, let me know. I'm always down to collaborate. And we've had people who've presented as a result of coming to these events. On the panel today, we've got Glynn Washington, Nancy López, Regina Bediako, as well as David Exumé. David is going to be our host, so he's going to moderate. Please give them a warm welcome.
Y'all staying dry? How you feeling? Good? Hell yeah. Well, welcome. Thank you. We've already been introduced, so I think I'm just going to get right into the next part of our presentation.
Yes. So welcome, everyone. I think the first thing we want to answer for you guys is what is a Snap Judgment story, which we will do throughout today's panel. But we also thought we'd bring in some voices from the Snap team who will break down for you what a Snap story is.
What makes a good Snap story?
Stakes, rich scenes, agency, and scoring as well.
A Snap story is cinematic.
We want the storyteller to put us in that moment as it's happening.
Ask questions to get our interviewees to tell their stories in the most sort of visceral and visual way.
Not with an I remember way back when statement.
What did it feel like? Feel like in your hands, in your throat, in your brain, in your heart. So that when our listeners are hearing a story, they're also able to actually see the images and see the scenes that our storytellers are describing.
And a good Snap story means something. There will be a moment when the listener stops and rethinks something about the world or themselves that they thought they knew. At the end of the story, that's what makes it feel satisfying, is that the listener and the creator have kind of a connection moment when they both realize that this story meant something.
Yes, and shout out to Anna Sussman, Bo Walsh, Shayna Shealy, and John Facile, who you heard on there. And this is also a nod to the music, right? We're storytelling with the beat. All the music that you hear is composed originally in-house by folks like David Exumé and Pat Mesiti-Miller and Bo Walsh. And I think you heard a little bit about what makes us distinct and who we are.
So I want to jump right into our next segment here, and that is just a few questions for our fearless leader, Glynn Washington.
That's me.
Now, Glynn, tell us about the last time you heard a really good story.
People tell me stories a lot. And sometimes when I don't want people to tell me stories, they tell me stories anyway. But the last time I heard a good story, I don't think it's going to be appropriate for Snap Judgment. It might be appropriate for Spooked. But the last time I heard a story that made me lean in, someone told me a story about meeting a vampire and how the vampire sucked their blood.
Okay.
And
Stop.
And I thought, go on. And I got an introduction through story to a culture I didn't know anything about. And apparently this is the thing that people can do these days, and I didn't know about it. And so yeah, that was the last time I heard a good story.
Was the culture vampire culture?
The culture was vampire culture. And I thought that was just Dracula and stuff like that. No. That's a real thing.
Were they undead or?
I didn't get the undead, but they were people who drink each other's blood.
Oh, okay.
How was the talker?
Why this vampire story?
Right.
Of all the vampire stories.
Yeah. So that's what we would ask each other. Like, how was the talk? Because someone could say it. Are they speaking it in a way that you would actually be drawn into the story? I think that the person speaking was more of an outlier to the community than someone who was an actual participant, and that is what I would like maybe to find. So this is perfect. In a Snap pitch session, we'd be like, that's cool, but I need somebody who's actually doing it. I want to talk to either someone who got their blood sucked or somebody who's sucking blood. We want to go a little bit deeper than somebody who saw somebody suck the blood.
That's real.
Nice.
Okay, so I'm going to play a little audio clip that I need you to contextualize. So this is the clip, and we hear it at the end of a lot of our Snap Judgment episodes.
And even though this is not the news, no way is this the news. In fact, you could dance in the mixed race dance club with all of your pals until the guys with the baton show up. And you have to pull a Von Trapp family and Edelweiss out the back, and you would still not be as far away from the news as this is. But this is PRX.
Now, Glynn, what do you mean when you say this is not the news?
So, Snap Judgment started as was distributed as an NPR show originally on the NPR, the mothership, the big stahuna, all that, NPR. And NPR is a news channel. We are not the news. And we want to be very, very clear about that from the beginning, because once you start saying you're a reporter, a bunch of other things come into play that you have to do, that you have to say, you have to go about. And I didn't want that. I couldn't do that, actually. We didn't have the resources to have an actual reporting team going on a weekly show. And that's one, we didn't have the resources. One, we didn't want to. There is a power to something other than reportage, power to story. This really gets to the heart of everything we're going to be talking about tonight. When someone tells you a story, you're not fact-checking it. You're not listening in the same way as you would if someone did a news report. And the way they tell you that story is oftentimes telling you something so much more about them. And if they got this wrong, the thing wrong, whatever, this is how they experience it, how they remember it. And stories are everything. The way someone understands their own story determines where they live, who they marry, everything about their person is encapsulated in the story they tell about themselves. And oftentimes, those are the stories we're asking about. Those really deep stories about you, about them, about the person. We want to get in that. And that's not the news. It's something so different, and I think in a lot of ways, so much more important. And so we want to be very, very clear the whole way through. And this is a guy who was not even on our staff. One of the stories that he did was about Bigfoot. And it was this Bigfoot story. And some of you might remember this story. What I love about it is at the beginning of the story, someone says, how truthy is this story? He says, well, about 80%. Cool, they can go down from there. I love it because he tells you exactly, about where this falls on the spectrum. We get it, we go on from there, we have a good time. I love it, I love how he said it, I love that, so I'm gonna just back up for a second as well. This is the real deal as too. Oftentimes in public media or any media, someone will tell you a story. And then, this is what we do in public media a lot, is then we say what that story means. On Snap Stories, we will tell you a story, and then we'll stop. The reason why we stop is because every single person is a meaning factory. You're asking yourself all the time, whatever you hear, what does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? That's just human. What does it mean? If we tell you what a story means, your brain goes, got it, stops. If instead we leave you with more of a question, that point is when it becomes a visceral thing for you. Your brain keeps cogitating it. What does that mean? What is that going on about? It's a story you want to talk to your spouse about, talk to your teacher, talk to your boss. It stays with you. That's the transmission device to leave you with a question instead of a conclusion. That's story. In story too, it's special because what I love so much about story is if we're a national show. Gets heard by over 1 million people every week, and it's heard places that might have maybe different value systems than the Bay does. But if I was to tell you, okay, I want to have a discussion with you about what I think about trans rights, and I'm going to have a polemic about that, all of a sudden the Dukes are going to come up. People are going to, we're going to have a fight about this. If I say, no, look here, I don't know about nothing else, but this is what happened to me. These stories play in West Texas, in Alabama, in Mississippi, and they do so often without the slightest bit of comment because we're just somebody telling a story. And, look, I love that, it's like Anna said it in the thing that you heard, we want to have a meaning. We do. But what I don't want to do is tell you that meaning explicitly. We want to lead a horse to water. I do not want to make that horse drink.
So Glynn, with everything you told us about the storytelling and Snap's vision, what is the future of Snap Judgment?
You're still surprised with that question. The future of Snap is... the future of Snap is this. We're going to be going in some places that we get to stretch. And some of you know that we recently became a part of KQED. Snap Judgment is now in the building. And yeah, it's a big deal.
And it's a beautiful building.
It is beautiful,
really lovely.
And beautiful
view.
people are here with us right now from KQED. We're thrilled to be here. And what it does is that we have been lost in the wilderness alone for a long time. And all of a sudden, we get to go deeper and expand our wings with the resources of one of the most prominent public media institutions in the world. And it's such a vote of confidence for our storytelling. But what we expect to hear is a new level of fearlessness. We have to be very, very careful sometimes at Snap Storytelling because I can't get sued. KQED can. No. Kidding. But to give you even the smallest example, recently, we did a story where we're using music, and we wanted to use, who was it? What was the band?
Is it Fleetwood Mac?
Fleetwood Mac. We wanted to use a bunch of Fleetwood Mac music in this piece, but I couldn't afford necessarily as an independent, the legal review, to get that stuff actually put into the story. KQED's got a legal team that was able to take care of that for us, and we could actually make the story better by using the music we were talking about. That's just the smallest example of what it is to have the resources, the institutional knowledge, and the support, the real support from the leadership of KQED. We're thrilled to be able to leverage this and make better Snap stories.
Glynn Washington, thank you so much. What we're going to move on to now is the pitch meeting.
Yeah, so we are going to do something a little special today and actually bring you into one of our pitch sessions. Yes, I did it, pitch sessions. It's hard to say that very fast. So before we get started, I just want to let you guys know these pitches do cover some very sensitive content. There's drug use, there's a description of intense medical situations, there's violence. We get into real shit. That's what happens. So just take care of yourselves. It's also a warning that we give during the show. And then also something I want to mention is that we tend to talk about story at a bit of a remove. And, we're getting into people's personal lives, like their tragedies. And then we're talking about it in a 3-act structure, which can be a little unsettling and a little weird. But hopefully, you can kind of take this in the spirit in which it is intended, which is that we have a lot of empathy for the people that have come to us, that are trusting us with their stories, sharing it with us. And we will be looking for ways to just make it the strongest story possible if we are able to share it on our platform, if it's a fit for our platform. So, okay, with that said, we're going to get started.
Can we stop for just a second? I just want to just say this. What are we looking for in a story when we're looking at these things? And you all should know this. A lot of you listen to a lot of Snap, but to put it into just the simplest terms as we can, we're looking for a personal first-person narrative that takes us on a ride that bobs and weaves, that surprises us and leaves us, like Anna said, going, I've been somewhere that I didn't know I was going to. I felt something, and also maybe it changed my view of the world a little bit. Those are the best stories. I mean, when for Snap Live, we want to make you laugh, cry, and laugh again. But most of the time, we're looking to take us on a real ride. We want it to be cinematic. We want to go somewhere. We want to feel this whole thing the entire time. If you can be as smart as you want, but if you don't feel anything, this is not really going to work for us. We want to be able to feel it the entire way through, and that's why the first-person narrative thing is 90% of what we do.
And if I may, just one more thing before we get into it, just thinking about the mindset of a pitch meeting, I think we're also looking at the potential, right? No pitch is perfect. No pitch is written up perfect. But I think our job is also to see the potential. And is it we're looking at words on documents and envisioning that as an audio piece. So there's also that, and knowing are we going to, what's the potential here for it to be really good? Just again, thinking about the mindset of when I'm entering a pitch meeting.
No, this is great. Actually, yeah. David, anything that you want to add about how you approach pitch sessions? Oh, darn it.
If I'm like submitting a pitch and I can't answer the question, what did this person do? Then it's probably gonna need some work. Like, there are some amazing worlds and some amazing people that bear witness to some incredible things and then write about the thing they witnessed. They didn't do anything. They were just there, and it was dope, and I'm glad I read it. But what really gets a pitch through the door is somebody was at that site, and then I had to do this, or I chose to do this, and then just actively change. It's a small thing that sounds really obvious, but like soon you start like reading more and more like first person accounts, and you start to really take in like what quantifies as agency, you know, what makes you stop and go like, if I was in that situation, I would not have done the same thing. Like, that's kind of the stuff I look for to decide if the person I'm finding is the person that's going to be the storyteller.
Did you suck the blood?
Did you
or it's something we like, did you happen to your environment, or did the environment happen to you? Like, did you affect change? Were you an agent of change in your environment, in your story? Or the way David put it, are you there in a great world, but you just observed?
Right, because then it might be that we stay in the world, we just find another character to bring us in.
I cannot explain how tragic it is when I find like a really cool like setting that I'm so excited to like bring to the radio, and there's no talker. There's no like main protagonist. It's like maybe a scene or a description of a vague event, but there's no talker. And that is always really heartbreaking, because I'm like, dang, I wish someone did something, because I want to share this world about curling or fencing or competitive window washing or something. I don't know. It's just like, it's a good world can almost be like a Trojan horse sometimes, because at least for me, I get sucked into all the factoids and little details, and then I got to be like, wait, we need a talker, we need a storyteller, we need the person telling this, and that's when kind of I got to go into producer brain mode and not internet guy mode.
And let me just finish with this. Oftentimes, when the pitches that work for Snap Judgment, like often people say, okay, I just pitched to This American Life and the Snap Judgment. Hold on.
Don't get it twisted.
Don't get it twisted. The difference is oftentimes that the producer, or let's say, in fact, the reporter on a This American Life piece, or even like a Radio Lab piece, will be the lead character throughout the thing. We tend to go the other way. We want the driver of the story to be the person living the story. It might be multiple people living that story, and maybe the producer has to act as the glue, but we don't want this to be at a remove. We're not reporting on this thing. We're getting this back. We're trying to illuminate what the people are saying. Now, this is, in fact, an artifice. When you take 15 hours worth of interview and you turn it into a 45-minute piece, that's a creation. And I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it when someone says, I'm glad I said it like that. You didn't. How dare you? Our producers work very, very hard to put those words in your mouth. No. We're trying to, just like a story itself is life distilled, a radio piece is a distillation of a lot of different things. Trying to distill it to its essence, to try to get those emotional moments out. And we want that to come from the person and not the producer.
Okay, thank you so much, y'all. Without further ado, you have 4 pitches here. We are going to talk about them. You'll see comments at the end of each pitch. Those are real comments that people wrote in the actual session. Also, just like a little bit more background. So we meet once a month to go over pitches, and it happens over Zoom these days. And yeah, we'll have read through. It'll be just like this. We'll read through the pitches beforehand. We'll write just like 1 or 2 lines with our take on how we feel about the story. And then we'll have a conversation live for like 5 minutes or so on each pitch, and decide whether it gets a green light, which means that we'll start production, a yellow light, which means that there's a lot of good things about the pitch, but we need to maybe find a new angle, go back to the talker, find another person, maybe. The world is great. Or to red light, which means that it's not going to move forward. It's not a fit for the show. So those are the terms that we're going to be talking in when we discuss these pitches. And yeah, let's dive in with the first pitch, which is Florida Whistleblower. I'm just going to summarize for y'all in case you didn't get a chance to read. So this is a story about a 30-year-old scientist. Her name is Rebecca. She's based in Florida. It takes place in 2020, which means, yes, it is a COVID story. So she has created a platform that actually acts as like the compilation of all the COVID data in Florida. So it's a really big deal. This is happening in March, early April 2020. So she's kind of like on the main stage. Like she's created a thing for the Florida Department of Health that is really, really important. And she is working 16 hours a day to keep this database going, is very invested in it. And then what happens is in April, so a few weeks after it goes live, she gets a request from Florida's Secretary of Health to essentially fudge the data. She is really unsettled by that request. She decides to submit a anonymous whistleblower complaint. A few days before she's fired for insubordination. After that happens, she is Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, is asked about her dismissal in a press conference, and he actually goes after her personally, says a few things, and she feels very attacked. And it actually becomes this really interesting kind of back and forth between DeSantis and, Rebecca, where he's saying things in a public setting about her, and then she is getting on social media or giving interviews to like The Guardian or CNN, and she's racking up hundreds of thousands of social media followers. So it's just really becoming this very like intense David and Goliath situation. And that also means, because the governor is coming after her, that there's a lot of archival footage for us here that we can pull and make a part of the audio story, which is a potential plus. So what ends up happening is that, let's see here, DeSantis says publicly that she has a charge against her. It's a trespassing charge. There's a couple other charges, and the charges, like, it's true that those are charges that are against her in her personal life. And so that kind of brings up this question of like, basically like who are we making a hero? Who are we putting onto a platform? How does that muddy the waters? It's really harrowing for her. DeSantis apparently, allegedly, orders a raid on her home. She actually has that on video. And she feels so scared that she wants to leave Florida and decides to do this, that she's going to move to DC. She goes to DC, and when she does, she's feeling sick. She's so sick along the way that she has to stop driving, seek shelter. She finds out that she has tested positive for COVID. And yeah, the fact that she was so just like, the whole reason that she got into this in the first place was to protect Floridians from COVID. And then she became, the potentially exposed hundreds of people in this quest to, get away from this person who was targeting her, from the governor of Florida who was targeting her. So that's the story. Yeah. What do you guys think?
Well, I remember when I read the pitch, I found the top very compelling. Like, wow, she's doing things. She's being told these things. She's like, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm standing my ground. You learn a bit more about her, and she's always been outspoken. So this is in line with what she does. And then she speaks out, and then what happens? Retaliation. And I think at that point, and then as the pitch continued, I kind of walked away thinking, there's a lot of momentum in the first half, and then it loses steam for me. Because I'm like, after that, it's like, why this whistleblower story? After that, it's, unfortunately, in this case, and again, for the sake of conversation in this story, she becomes a victim, right? It's like, I'm looking, what else happened? Is there a moment where she reclaims her agency, where this story takes a turn that I'm not expecting? Whereas, again, just in general terms, she speaks out and then there's retaliation, which I feel like that's very familiar territory for us and in general. So I felt that for me is where I'm like, I wish something else happened for our purposes as a Snap story.
Make no mistake, we're looking for something incredible. We want to go somewhere where we're not expecting what happens next. And for me, I kind of was not surprised at any of the steps after the initial setup. We have two different terms. We might use them later on today here, but one is called, we just use this internally, it was non-profity. And that just means like at the end of it, maybe they started a group or something like that, and it's like, yeah, it's not really going to get it for me. Another is that we say, and that's probably for something else, we say it might be suffering from a valley of death problem. We are a radio show that is really, we've got to entertain people. We want to take them somewhere, we've got to entertain them. A valley of death is if I take you somewhere dark, then I better take you back out of it again. I better leave you somewhere. We can have sad endings, but if I take you somewhere dark, it better be worth it. If you're gonna kill the puppy, ooh, you bet. Don't just go random willy-nilly killing puppies.
Or elephants.
Right, or elephants. Or
seal pups.
Right. What we've done. But if you do that, you better make it worth it. You better. And I feel like to some degree here, I'm just not getting enough of a payoff for this dive. And the thing of it is that the COVID thing, I see what they were doing there. You start off the beginning, go to the end.
That doesn't feel poetic to you? Like,
but
she's spelled by the very thing that she's trying to.
It would if everybody in this room hadn't gotten COVID.
Right. To me, it also felt like, well, it was inevitable. You were going to get COVID. It was like a false loop, I felt.
Mm-hmm. Did we do this story?
Did we greenlight it or no? Anyone want to take a guess?
Oh, this is also something we're going to do with the...
Oh, yeah.
We forgot to like just...
Yeah, this is where we at.
This is where you guys get to guess.
Yeah,
Did we greenlight it or not?
This is where I get to guess. I heard some reds, some yellows. I got a red.
I would say
Yellow major reworking. Anyone from stage left? I think we should let them know.
Okay.
I got a yellow from stage left. Is this stage left?
This was a red light.
Red light.
It did not move forward. No, it did not move forward. It was a kind of a fatal flaw that it just couldn't get out of the why this whistleblower story territory. What's really tough for us is I think what's interesting about the word surprise, we say that a lot, and I want to note that surprise is informed by like your cultural context. So what that means to people will be different for everybody. We basically take the temperature of the group, and if the group is feeling like we know where the story is going, then that's just a really tough structural issue for us to get over with the pitch.
Thank you. Thank you, Regina.
Yeah.
Oh,
that was great too.
Yes. All right. Do you mind if I borrow yours? I didn't bring.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so the next pitch was called Grief Rituals. Also COVID adjacent. It was a time. So this is a pitch about a person named Noe in the DRC, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Ebola is an issue. I'm going to try to recap it, because the way the pitch is written an interesting kind of like peeling an onion, and there's layers and layers and layers, which is very interesting. Each layer is very interesting, but the gist is, here's this guy. There's a lot of Ebola deaths. There's a lot of taboos around burying bodies that have died, and he's trying to lean into it and give people a space to grieve these loved ones that people feel are untouchable. And he starts a clinic, and it's a big risk to himself, to his family. Again, there's a lot of parallels to COVID, because people don't know what it is or who gets sick or who doesn't. And but his whole thing is not only to care for these bodies, but also to provide ritual and opportunities for grief to people around him. And then it ties into how he lost his dad when he was younger. Kind of unrelated, but again, so there's like this confluence of Ebola and what it's doing to society and how he's trying to help, and also hearkening back to his personal story, having lost his dad. And it's an amazing world, and that's pretty much where it ends, where he evacuates his family to the neighboring country. He comes back repeatedly and is doing this work. So that is the gist of the story. And when I look at the comments, I agreed with AS, our beloved Anna Sussman, where and I felt this too, where I'm like, oh, the story seems to lie towards the end. That's kind of where it brings us to where he is currently and what he's doing. And as Anna suggests, it'd be great like to start there and then find a case, find the body of someone and their loved one, and maybe their attempts to come close to the body and grieve it. So that's Anna, and that's what we do a lot in our pitch, where we're offering like, okay, I'll take this, but how do I up it this, right? Where we're in here trying to be like, okay, I see nuggets of here, and I think if we go in this direction, maybe something could work.
I thought it was a small comment about the pitch itself, which is something I'm definitely guilty of doing, which is the 2*, which is just like give it a shot, please. Like I do that all the time, and I work here. Rich scenes, big stakes. It's good that they make it clear that they're a good talker. I've done that so many times. I've written the pitch and been like, he's great, I promise. Like it is also like a great detail to have when we're assessing it, because one thing you'll also notice is the pitches are written and our stories are audio. So sometimes we need a little bit of just explicit clarification of, have you met the talker? Have you heard him speak? Can you link to audio of this person sharing a story? That also tends to help sometimes. Have they been recorded before? Just a little thing to think about.
Yeah, that's a great point. That it will definitely help your pitch to share what kind of access you have to the talker, and to let us know like how feasible is this? If this is somebody that you read about in an article and you actually haven't talked to them yet, then, that is going to be different for us than if this is like, you've been talking to them for 3 months. You're the only person they'll talk to, that just helps us figure out, okay, how likely is it for us to be able to actually make a story here?
It's also like one thing about that is like we do this thing too where we have like sometimes we like meet our talkers before we pitch. Sometimes we meet them like at various stages of the process. One thing that we do is like pre-interviewing just a subject, just get into like see if someone's cool, like reach out to them, see if they got something to say. Let's just like shoot the breeze with them. And that's how I usually do my pre-interviews. I just have a conversation and just be like, that was crazy. Tell me a little more about how you're feeling about it. It goes a long way in either loosening the person up or sometimes, rarely, but I'm very excited when it happens, you get like a little extra detail they just didn't write about, or an angle they didn't include because they didn't think it'd be necessary for this maybe literary journal or essay or article. And then you're like, wait a minute. Wait, say that one again. And that is such a good feeling. That is such a good feeling. Because I feel like even like that person didn't realize how valuable that thought or that experience was until you ask them for more.
So back to this pitch. Glynn, do you have any thoughts? And actually, this is kind of how it worked in the meeting too.
I was going to say, it's like a one-to-one translation.
It really
is. When you were like, does that not feel poetic to you? I'm like, I've been in this conversation so many times.
Those are literally the words I said when we were talking about the pitch. So yeah, we will probably ask Glynn to hold off because he's obviously got a lot of power as the host of the show. So yeah, we'll usually share a few thoughts and then he'll come in and let us know what he thinks. But it is more of a group decision how we feel about the story.
Yeah, I would wait right now. Actually, I would like to know what people think.
I mean, I would draw folks' attention to the comments. People really responded positively to this pitch. I think for a lot of us, it's like you had me at grief ritual, right? Like, at least for me, there's just something interesting, compelling about that. I think a lot of us were like, I think the sense was like the way it was written, maybe not, but like, maybe this is something worth pursuing. There's something we can craft out of this.
What we do?
Red light.
That's how I feel after a lot of pitch sessions. Yeah.
I know, we're giving you the feeling, guys.
Yeah,
get used to it.
Yeah, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough, and
because this is you, right?
Yeah.
Can you explain your comment?
So, okay, every once in a while, I actually do make comments on the sheet. Sometimes, though, I'll put my name and I won't put my initials down. I'll trick them. No.
So TMS.
Oh, sorry, that's a very.
It's his pen name.
I should have mentioned that the pitches are in the doc anonymously. So if y'all pitch us, we won't put your names on there. Our names are not on our pitches. Yeah. So we have a degree of anonymity.
Look, sometimes you have to look at a story and say, is this going to be a good show? Am I going to take somebody on an Again, I'm not kidding about that whole thing. We have to entertain. We have to entertain. We have to elucidate. We have to do a lot of different things. And sometimes you look at this and it's like, I'm sorry, I'm not getting a through line narrative. I'm not. It's kind of going all over the place. I don't. It's a sad situation. I'm not feeling it though. Let's do something else because I have a group of some of the best producers on the planet. This story would take about 3 months of someone's time to do, to go from start to finish, maybe longer.
That feels optimistic.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, yeah, it's optimistic, right? Am I going to have one of our people spend 3, 4, 5 months trying to make this story happen? Again, I need spectacular. I need something awesome. If it's not going to be spectacular, we might have filler stuff, a shorter piece that we need to fill an hour, but this would be a full hour story. I can't have that. And so sometimes good stories, really good things, we have to pass on it anyway. And I will just say this, that what Regina was saying earlier, as someone who's coming from the outside, it's probably going to be a really, really good idea to have access. If we haven't worked with someone before and they're going to pitch us a story, we're really going to probably say, how do you know, what is your contact with this person? Or you don't, if we read it in the New York Times, probably isn't going to cut it. You've got to have some sort of intimacy and access with the person to get it through.
At the very least, like a game plan, at the very least, usually tends to help.
Yeah, I think with this story too, you get to the end of the pitch and you're like, but then what did you do? You know, for me, it felt like there's just no act 3, almost like no act 1. We had like 1.5 acts here. So really, again, like a beautifully moving setup. But then where do we go from there? And we weren't really going anywhere for the purpose of this pitch.
Wait, next one.
Okay. All right, so now on to our third pitch, which is Locked In. Okay, and this is a story about a young man who is a drug user. I think his drug of choice is heroin, and he is actually he freebases in his car. And while he's doing that, he gets pulled over by the cops. And when that happens, he's trying to put his drugs away, but he can't. Something's wrong. And he doesn't know what it is. Maybe it's the drugs. Obviously, the cops find him with drugs in his hands, so he is going to jail. When he does, he's still like off. He's not, something's wrong with him. Like his voice is higher than usual. He's not walking correctly. And it kind of continues for the next couple of days. And then his wife is like, I think there's something really wrong with you. We should go to the hospital. They go to the hospital, and because he's a drug user, they're not really trying to give him the time of day. But his wife insists by playing the voicemail that he has on his phone, and his voice is so much different than what they're hearing in person. So the doctor's like, oh, yeah, we are going to do a battery of tests on you. And come to find out, he has a fatal disease that I cannot say.
That's due to the drug use, right?
It's in part due to the drug use.
Okay, I thought it was due, yeah.
It's funny, in part. So in part, it's due to the drug use. But yeah, it is this very, very rare neurological disorder. Essentially, what's happening is that he has, if you think about like rock salt on ice, and what that and then that the salt is the toxin, and that the ice is his brain matter. So they say that he's going to have a very rapid decline. He's going to die within 6 months. Like there's no hope for him, and it's going to happen very quickly. When they mention that, he says, oh, well, might as well get high. And he does some heroin in his hospital room. And that's when the medical staff comes in and tells him, you really should take this seriously, or it's going to be an even more painful end, to which he's like, okay, fine. And what we have happening over the rest of this story is his very, very rapid decline to the point where he is essentially locked in his own body. He cannot move a single muscle. And the medical team around him thinks that he's also lost his cognitive ability as well. But he's fully there. They just don't know it. So what's happening is the nurses around him are like keying about like what happened that day at work. And he's like, I'm in here. Nobody knows I'm in here. Is this just going to be this way until I die? Which is just like such,
that's nightmare fuel.
Yeah, right? Yeah, grade A nightmare fuel right there. And he has like a choice to make about like how, like, is this just going to be the end of his life, and does he just accept that? And for Jacob, he said he can't. And so what he decides to do is to just try to find any way to communicate to the people around him. I am in here. I am 100% in here. Please see me. And it's not working. For months, it's not working. It seems like he's going to die. He accepts that he's going to die. It even seems like it happens one day, but he doesn't die. And that's when he redoubles his efforts. And one day, he manages to catch the attention of someone. And they ask him, can you do that again? And it's about blinking his eye. And he's able to do it. It feels like a 500-pound weight on his eyes, but he is able to do it.
Yeah, so that's the story. And how, like, a person with locked-in syndrome trying to break out of locked-in syndrome. Obviously, as a first-person storytelling show, he's the guy talking.
Or you hope.
Right. And so that was a thing. And this is someone breaking out of locked-in syndrome, once you have it, is an extremely rare occurrence. extremely rare. I don't think it's in triple digits, the number of times that's happened in documented medical history. So, what do you think?
She was selling it. I mean, I was
Hell
like,
yeah.
and then what? And then what? Geez, did it work?
We should say what you're saying. She's saying that she could hear this, and she could hear from the way that Regina was saying the story, that she was hearing the beats of the story, essentially, that she thought would probably work for a show like Snap Judgment.
And the sound design.
Play the clip.
Well, y'all, I guess we should play the clip from the show.
I had a call bell system. I had a way to signal for help. All I would have to do is pretend to freak out, which wasn't that hard because I was always in crisis. I mean, it was a small victory, small accomplishment, but it gave me a sense of like control in a way. Like there's something I can actually do to help myself.
But Jake had to be careful. If he sent his heart rate above 170 beats per minute, his nervous system would spin out of control, which could be fatal. But by going just over 160, he could safely get the nurse's attention.
So I had like a 10 BPM beat window. So I was really good at raising my heart rate. What I couldn't do is calm it back down. And I pushed it too far one day, and I triggered an autonomic storming episode.
Yeah, so that's a clip from the episode. The talker is describing one of the tools that he discovered of being able to get the attention of the medical staff around him, where he would actually like lower and raise his heart rate. That was the only thing that he was able to do. But this is how it started. Like the reason why this story worked so well for us is because like that's agency. Oh my God. Like he is locked in his body, but he is able to make these decisions that change the course of his life.
And one of the comments in there, in the feedback was like, well, if we can hear him, we know he made it. So where's the tension, right? And that's real, and that's a real concern. But there was something about betting on the potential of this story. And clearly the guy was able to take us there and really take us into the nitty gritty of what he had to do, the Herculean effort to just blink an eye, which is just amazing to hear. Yes.
I think the other aspect of it is that there's a really clear three structure. Like there's like it's a three-part story. Like you have your character in the beginning, he's like high all the time, doesn't care, and then he's like, oh my God, in his body, and then even though he's telling the story, I think people want to know how he got
out.
What is your name? Yes. E is saying that it was a three-part structure of the story that was very obvious in the pitch. That beginning, you're starting out at the heroin user, and then it goes on to being in the hospital bed, and then someone trying to break out, which is really, I think, a really good point. It's something, obviously, we're looking for a three-part, almost all the time we're looking for a three-part structure. What we're really looking for, almost every time, is somebody wanting something. Somebody's going to want something. They might not get it, but we want them to want something. The setup is, what do they want? This guy's going to want to not be in his locked-in state anymore. And does he get it or not? I don't, and you can still hear from his voice, he gets most of it, but he probably, there's some residual left. And I hate this. Like we sometimes sound ghoulish as story producers, but as a narrative person, that there's a little bit of that mistake left in his very voice. Narratively, a screenwriter would say, yes. She's saying it's like Harry Potter's Thunderbolt. There's leftover scars from this situation, which is a really. I love Potter maniacs. My daughter would love that comment. Love it.
Yeah.
Well.
And I just want to highlight something else, E, that you said that too. Like, although we know this guy made it because we're hearing him, it was about the how. Like, now you're intrigued. Like, I know you made it out, but seeing how locked in you did get, and how as a listener you're really taking me there. How did you get out? So yes, that's a great point.
And then just two more quick things. Another reason why it worked so well, that opening scene is wild. Like, we live and die off of scenes, right? So make sure that your pitch has great scenes. That's just, it's our bread and butter. So there's that aspect of it. Also, like, this guy is making some very surprising decisions. He got a death sentence and then he smoked up.
I kind of get
with the nurses there, like,
I'm not. And again, that's why I like our show. It's because we can show people making mistakes, making decisions that we personally wouldn't do. But like, I don't know, when he said like, if I'm gonna die, I might as well shoot up. I'm like, part of me is like, yeah, I understand. I don't know if it's what I would do, but I know you as a character, and yeah, now I kind of get what you're about.
Yeah, we don't have to agree with your choice. We kind of want to understand why you did it. Most of the time, we don't agree necessarily with the choices that set these stories up. But oftentimes the role of the producer is to show us the world where that might have made some sense, or at least where it was understandable. That's, and we do that a million different ways. But we want to have empathy the entire way through for the character. And if someone's just doing a bunch of willy-nilly things without context, we'll never have that empathy.
Yeah, it's like, I don't have to like what you're doing, but I can understand what compelled you to do what you're doing. Yeah.
And now we're saying that, let me just say this as well. This is something that my partner, Mark, he hates this when I say this, but it's true. I don't mind liars. I don't.
Hot take.
We're gonna cut this out of the recording.
If the producer puts themselves in the position of every man or every person and pushes back on someone who is maybe trying to deceive or trying to make themselves look a certain way, that means that story. We get to that storytelling thing again. I can't just have you just lying and then tell a story. No, I want that if someone's telling a lie, that is such a window into the person that is telling that story, that it becomes part of the whole thing. We have to be extremely careful about that. Again, we don't want to trick anyone. We don't want to fool anyone. We have to fact check everything crazy, and that is why a producer will push back. Like, I don't think that's quite how things went down. But when that happens, and if someone's trying to do that, we love characters. We love characters. We're going to get into the next pitch is a really good example of that. Anyway, we'll get to the next pitch.
Well, what happened? All right. Christmas Tree Mafia. So Scott is this poor kid from Brooklyn who comes of age and wants to get rich. But, he doesn't want to get in trouble or anything. And a friend tells him, why don't you start selling Christmas trees in front of this, mafia's front bowling alley? He's like, oh, great. I won't get in trouble. Christmas trees, innocent. Let's do it. And so he starts selling. And the mafia boys, approach him. He has some misgivings, but then they kind of go in on it together. We'll take care of you. You take care of us. Great, let's do it. And he was ready. He was just ready to go in. And he starts selling trees at $20 a pop. And it just becomes a very lucrative thing for him. So much so that other people are trying to get on his turf. Next thing you know, people are paying $1,000 for a tree. And it becomes $1 billion industry. And you know what comes? More money, more problems. And so he starts getting into some little trouble, right? And then the mafia.
Not his
No.
particular. That he did not make $1 billion.
Yeah, no, but the
Just wanna
industry,
clarify.
the industry, yes.
The Christmas tree industrial complex.
And he starts getting a nickname, Piney. And so things are going great, but as a result, turf wars break out. Thugs try to steal Scott's trees at night and attack him. And again, Scott's thinking, I got into something that was gonna be, stress-free, criminal-free, and now like people want to get him killed, right? It's like this is exactly what he didn't want, which again, we love, right? So he's right, his fortunes rise, and so the mafia is now looking at him, and they're like, you know what? We want to bring you in. We want you to join us, and we'll take care of you. And then that's when Scott had to make the ultimate decision. Was he going to go all in or not? And he decides to walk away. And that's the pitch. And the person provided us with tape from Scott, which again, great for us because it already tells us 50% of what we need to know. How does this person talk?
I think what I liked about this pitch was especially that, like, I think when we talk about agency, it kind of sounds like we're saying they didn't have what they wanted, and then over the course of the story, they get it. And it's like, I like this because we start with him making a choice and kind of just like, it kind of goes well. It's like Christmas trees. Cool. I'm going to make $1 bajillion Christmas tree dollars. And so we kind of, it's almost like mission accomplished, and the but is what makes this entire story.
Oof, yeah, like it's one of our favorite story structures is what happens when you get exactly what you dreamed of and it just goes left. Ugh.
And the reason why we're harping on this is because if you get something you want and it goes right, that's good for you. That's not really a snap
like,
story.
I don't want to hear it.
Like,
right.
so at the risk, this is why we sound so negative. We're like, why did your treasure hurt you? It's like, it's compelling.
Why did your treasure hurt you?
I'm just going to give away the game here, as you can.
I mean,
surprise.
I mean, it's on the screen.
But from the pitch itself, the pitch was Christmas Tree Mafia. I was like, peace. I'll see you later.
That was one of the quickest pitch sessions we've had.
What, you got the guy? Do you have the guy? Actually, that was the thing. For a minute, we didn't have the guy because something had happened and he wasn't available. He's actually, unfortunately, the person has since passed away. But he was sort of sick, and he
had cancer. I believe.
He passed away during the production process.
Yes, and a really, really cool guy, very open, and the producer had a lot of access to him once she actually did it. But it took a while. We thought that we weren't going to have the story at all. But once she established that access with this, his voice, his knowledge, his openness, his understanding, like of the mafia, his lingo, he sounds like a wise guy half the time. Come on,
Piney.
That I remember saying that in the session, like piney, green light.
Yeah. Do you have audio from this one? No. Okay.
Oh no, but we it's all on the website. You just
it's also it's
Google
online.
Christmas tree mop, or you put that into the search field on our website. And enjoy. It is a really great story. And also, I just want to say these last two pitches came from freelancers. So, yeah, people just like yourselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we're hoping that, with this, what we're doing today, we can set you up for success. If y'all are here, that tells us that you want to pitch Snap. And here's some examples of, people who got into the same avenue.
So, somebody wants something. Somebody tries really hard to get it. We're looking for something cinematic. We want to see these scenes. We want to see these things pop. We need a bob and a weave. I have to be surprised at some point in the story. The story's going to go this way and then plow. And the whole time too, we're looking to feel something. When people want something, they feel something about it. And I want to feel it too. And at the end, they get it, they don't get it, that's kind of immaterial to whether or not it makes a good story for us, but we want to feel like well, if you will, and then I learned, and finally I realized it's probably not where we're going to end up. We want someone at the end of the thing to do something. That's the best way for us to finish. Like, forget what you think about what you learn. What you do. It's far more illustrative of where your mindset is than what you say you realize in the end.
Actually, that's a great note to just kind of go right into how it works.
How to actually do this, and nuts and the bolts.
How to actually do the dang thing.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the email that you're going to send your pitches to. So I think we're going to have this up on the website. So, I mean, feel free to write this down now. But yeah, what you'll do is, so we really would like for the pitches to be no more than 3 pages long. If it's a 10-page pitch, y'all, that's just a lot of words. And also, like, what that does is it shows us that you are able to craft this. This is the first iteration of the story, so show us that you can craft it. Make sure to put a trigger warning on that. I think we just had this one pitch that involved like a lot of shooting, and
right, yeah.
Ooh, I think that one came from David. I was like, David,
damn,
this is a lot.
I felt targeted, but no, it was a pitch about somebody who, you know, she does take agency, and there is a thing inflicted upon her, and she responds. But at the end of the day, it was the Valley of Death thing. It was where we went through this whole story and how we ended were not congruent.
Yeah. So just make sure you just let us know ahead of time, because again, we will put this directly in the pitch document. We also might, one of our producers might follow up with you to just craft the pitch a little bit more. So that is also a possibility. Let's see. Oh, to also just give you a sense of like what the pitch process, or rather what the production process is. We have about like 4 to 5 stages. So let's say your pitch goes through, you get the green light. You know, we set up a contract, you start production. You'll do an edit of the story. That first edit is what we call the buddy edit, where one of us will be going through that story, giving you high-level notes. The second edit is with our entire team. And so all 8 of us will listen to the story. We'll give you more detailed notes. At that stage, we'll decide. And also, like, at any of these stages, we will decide, like, okay, is the story actually working? Will we continue moving forward? Or, you know, will we stop working on it? Will we terminate production on the story? So that's the group stage. After group, you know, we will go into what we call a word lock, which is a bit of a misnomer.
It's an internal debate about word locks.
Yeah. Tell them what it's supposed to be.
What it's supposed to be is, at that point, you probably would have done a couple of interviews. You will have done several edits of a story. And so the word lock would be that you are in a session with our managing editor, Nancy, and perhaps another editor, and you're actually doing like a line edit of the story. You're going through every single line and hearing it and deciding, like, okay, is this in the right place? Do we need to add more? Are we taking something away? Do we have the scenes together correctly? Are we missing a beat? So that's what would happen in the word lock stage. That's a pretty lengthy edit. It's all real time. It's a really great way to learn, actually. I love actually being in a word lock. After the word lock, we will have probably a few more edits, and that's why there's an internal debate over, are we actually locking the words? But essentially, I think what you guys need to know is that the process can take anywhere from about 8 weeks to several months. I think there's a story that we're working on now with a freelancer that's like, it's a bit longer.
Since the summer.
The summer, yeah. And the point here is that, like, we know that you guys have lives and you have other jobs and other gigs that you are working on. And for us, the most important thing is getting the story right. So we're not going to rush the process. And basically all we ask of you is that you just communicate with us about your availability, you know. So if you need to take a few weeks to prioritize something else that you're working on, that's totally cool. Just like keep us apprised of, you know, your availability ahead of time. And then of course, importantly, the payment. So we pay $140 per minute of the finished piece from first word to last word. A lot of our pieces clock in around like 25 minutes-ish, I would say. We have pieces that probably run from like anywhere from like 15 minutes to an entire episode, like I think Glynn mentioned before. So sky's the limit. It really is, in terms of what kind of story that you feel excited about sharing with us.
It really is. Like, in my experience, my favorite part of working here is they're like, if you can find a talker, you can go into whatever weird shit you want to talk about on Snap Judgment. Like, any world is available to you, so long as you have the story, the ingredients, you know, necessary to make a good story soup.
So we're gonna do a quick Q&A, maybe 2 or 3 questions. So if you have any questions for the team, let's give them a quick round of applause first.
Thank
and
you.
there'll be time to mingle. But do you have any questions? Feel free to raise your hands and we'll bring the mic over so that the people virtually can hear it too.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
My name's Sarah. I was just wondering if, obviously this is a lot of work, and do you accept stuff, and I apologize that you may have said something, I walked in late, but what if you've written a book, or do you adapt material from other media?
Absolutely.
Hi, it's E again. So my question is, you said something about having multiple characters. Is there like a ceiling in terms of characters, or
I feel like the ceiling kind of sets itself. If you're writing the pitch and you find maybe there's like a person and you realize they're kind of taking a lot of the actions that are propelling the story, like you might realize that maybe this conversation with this person can be turned into narration, or this thing can be reduced and we follow one voice. But to answer your question, like less metaphorically, in my experience, I don't think that there's a ceiling, but it's hard to like make I don't know. I don't think we have like a hard and fast rule on ceilings.
We would love to have some more multi-character stories. Oh my goodness. There's this one story that episode you should check out. It's called Money Truck. And we followed 7? Yeah, with like 7 different people. And we would love to do more of that. Yeah, it's a bit more of an experimental breaking format pitch for us, or story for us, but yeah, we loved it.
Just from an audio perspective, though, multiple stories is difficult. And there's 2 things. Number one, the superpower of audio stories is the intimacy. You get inside someone's head when they're speaking. The difficult thing, like, you know, in a movie, you can pan and get the entire mafia around the table. You can't do that with audio storytelling the same way. So it's just going to be, can you incorporate it into a thing? It really helps if the voices are distinctive, or sometimes we can do this with scoring around them. But trying to separate voices is a difficult thing in audio sometimes. But I agree with everything you said. We would love to have more multi-voice stories.
Yeah, and usually the multi-voice stories, it's there's the episode This Is Not a Drill, where we follow in Hawaii, you know, when the false alarm went on. And so we followed people, what happened in leading up to that moment. So each story wasn't a full typical Snap story. It was like what they were each doing in that moment. Little vignettes that built up to something more. So there's that. there's stories where it's like sometimes something is pitched, it's one talker, and as we're going through the process, maybe it's a story about someone and their dad figures so much that we're like, man, wouldn't it be great to hear? And sometimes the story itself asks for it, and so we ask for it, and so we might bring in one or two. So it just depends on even how you're coming into it. But we're totally open, and we love it when we can have more voices.
I was just curious about how you personally search for stories, and like how and where have you found some of your best stories?
Oh, it's literally like nothing is off limits. Like I'm not even, well, okay. The favorite place I found a story was somebody reposted a tweet that had like 20 likes and it was a DIY like magazine that had like, I don't know how many listeners it was or how many readers, but they told a story. The person like had an essay in that, and I reached out to them and I was like, can you tell me about that? And I'm currently working on that story. So I don't have any good advice. Be on the internet all the time. It's good for your health. And you get a story.
David, you should touch grass as often as possible.
Not today, it's wet.
And hydrate, do that too.
Feel the raindrops.
There you go, thank you. For me, my favorite place I found the story was in a podcast. How did I even get to that podcast? I don't know, but they were talking to a comedian, and just in the description of the show, this was like just like a regional show, like out of Chicago, and they had 2 lines about this guy's story, and I was like, whoa, he met his mother at an open mic. For the first time. He met his biological mother for the first time at an open mic. And I was like, so I went and I like listened to the whole episode. It was 2 minutes and it was crazy. And yeah, I called him up, and that became a story that we did.
But generally memoirs, books, articles.
Which is why we're excited about what you have to share with us.
Yes.
So I'm going to take there's some people online asking questions as well. So 2-parter. Do you all work on Spooked besides Glynn, of course? And then are there any specific kind of stories, voices, or settings that y'all are particularly hungry for at the moment?
Unfortunately, the Spook team's not here tonight. That's a different pitch session. We'll probably be doing that later on.
They're more popular than us.
I'm sorry, what the second part of that was what?
What are y'all hungry for at the moment in terms of stories, voices, or settings?
Oh man, you know what I'm hungry for right now? A big failing, I think, of ours has been stories that this sounds it sounds how it sounds, but we have not covered the deaf community very well. And as far as access on transcripts, and as far as stories from the community itself, and I want to make it like a big push. We're going to be having a meeting about this actually pretty soon. This is a it's crazy that we haven't really explored stories from that community yet, and we're gonna try. We're always like one of the earlier question. I often remember when people used to go to parties. There's a few years back. Yeah, this was kind of a party, but so whenever someone said, "Hey, I got this story. You ain't gonna believe this," but that was always when I would listen in, and oftentimes a lot of the stories, especially from our early years, came from things of just like that. We're looking for stories, though. We're always looking for stories that help us into a micro community. One of my favorite stories, I think actually Nancy went into a hair battle contest.
Bronner Brothers, Atlanta.
Yeah, fantastic story. Anna Sussman did this story with the Miss Snake Charmer situation, a Miss Snake World or something like that in Texas. I don't know anything about that. All these but it's not enough to have the backdrop. We still need a person in that arena that wants something, that's going for something. I want a roller derby story. I want a bingo story. I want, when I talk all these little micro communities around there, I want a story that we're at a senior citizen complex where there is a feud. That's what I really want. I think some of those stories are the best stories ever. I want to hear from both sides. I want to hear the whole senior citizen situation blow up. I want to hear all the anger, all the frustration, and so think about that. Think about the setting and think about who wants what where when you're pitching. Almost anything, if you get deep into it, a homeowners association feud. Would, somebody didn't cut their grass the right way. That could be a real story if we find the right person.
All right. Please give it up again for the Snap team. Thank you, Regina, Nancy, Glenn, David.
Thank you.
Thank you all. So those